Okay, so we've gone live, and now we've done the cutover, and the question is, what do we need to look for in our new environment to make sure that it's performing well, especially say we're going from 10 to 11 or an earlier version of 11.0 to 11.2.1. What are the knobs we need to turn potentially to make sure things are humming along and people are happy?
Yeah. So we've kind of discussed some of these things before, but again, and it's a bigger deal if you're moving from old to newer versus you've already been on new and you're just point upgrading, that sort of thing. But if you've done a full content store upgrade, full content store deployment, or you've pulled in that full content store, one of the things that doesn't come in are your server configurations. So there are things that are set at the server, like the app server level. So things like your auditing and your logging, your query service memory settings, that sort of thing, number of high and low affinity connections. If those were set at a server level, like right at on the properties of the server, they don't pull in when you pull the content store in, because that's not where they're stored. So the big one, and what we see often is, we've been live for a while, and we go to run some audit, whether you use Thrive or you use the audit store or anything like that, and all of a sudden there's almost no information in there.
Yeah.
Number one thing that happened is it's still set to minimum, your logging settings. So one of the things I do as soon as I do an upgrade is I usually go in and make sure that the server settings that we've set, either the special properties that we've set or the number of dispatchers, I need to make sure that at least it's capturing what it was in the past. So I'll go make sure that they match for there. Then you have to look at the performance. So do we need to tune it for new functionality? Do we need to go in and make sure that sort of thing's running? So those things need to be done. Like, so as an admin, getting into the admin console is important to go through and make sure that matches. You may also need to do, we're kind of talking about the licensing implications. So if you're a PVU user, you do need to have ILMT installed, which is the way that IBM audits or proves that you're using just as much PVU as you're supposed to be using. Particularly important if you're on a virtual environment, so that you don't sort of, on-prem machines that are fixed are one thing, but if you're running virtual environments, you really need to make sure that you're only using the PVU that you say you're using from there. So that's a whole different beast. We could do a whole week on that one alone, but you do need to make sure that you're doing that properly, especially if you're PVU licensing.
Yeah, that's really crucial too. I think what will happen in that case too is IBM, let's say you're in a virtualized environment, but you don't have ILMT installed. IBM will then come in and the audit team will say, well, look, this box had 256 processors on it.
Yeah.
And so you should pay for 256 processors worth of Cognos, because we don't know you weren't running it on all 256. Yeah. So you really need to watch out for that if you are in a PVU environment. And what about with the Cognos 10 licenses? When they map into Cognos 11, is there any weirdness that can occur that can get you into trouble?
Yeah. So like, no matter what version you're on, you really have to go through the capabilities. So the licensing is all tied to capabilities. And because Cognos sets those capabilities for you to start, we often kind of ignore, like, that's a thing that gets dropped off of most projects. We don't, or that often will kind of like, oh, it works. My users get to see what they are. So there's like a couple of little things. Like if you leave the everyone group in the system admins option, that means everybody is an administrator. There are a number of capabilities. I was going to send you an option of this. I didn't, but there's a number of capabilities that actually make you an admin. Yeah. So if you don't go through those capabilities very carefully and make sure that your users who should be let's say explorers are explorers or admins who are admins. You have to be super careful that you go through there. I think we did a blog post at PM Square at one point about kind of making sure that these capabilities are set properly. I took a kind of a I made a task for myself at one point where I created new users, named them what roles I thought they would be, plunked them into different groups, and made sure that the capabilities all worked. And it took me a really long time to make sure that users were ending up in their proper buckets. Like, so this is not a small job. Um, this is another one of those things we could definitely help you with where, you can start to look at the different sets of capabilities. Um, One of the things that I mean, this is bigger than just an upgrade, but IBM gives you all these different security groups when you sign in. I like to scale that back as far as possible to how we actually use our system. So in my ideal world, we would have 4 role groups, maybe 5, which would be, like, tied to my licensing that I could make sure that, if I'm paying for you as either a named user or a PVU style license, I would go in and make sure that, you're in this bucket. I might do other groups for keeping our content organized, but, like, just for straight tool use, um, so it can control who has what access within the system. So it's a big like that's a huge topic. We could do another day on that if you want.
Yeah, we really could.